The staff knew better than to complain. Prince Andrew's temper could erupt without warning, over nothing. He'd scream, he'd curse, he'd verbally tear people apart. Now, after decades of silence, those who witnessed his behaviour behind palace walls are finally speaking. And what they're describing isn't just rude, it's a calculated pattern of humiliation targeting people who had no power to fight back. Society insiders, journalists, titled guests, they all watched Andrew treat women and staff like accessories in his private circus. Hit subscribe right now, because these testimonies reveal exactly why the king had no choice but to remove every last shred of Andrew's royal protection. Picture this, a grown man's bedroom containing 72 stuffed animals, arranged with military precision. The household staff were given laminated photographs showing the exact placement of each bear. If even one was positioned incorrectly after cleaning, Andrew would erupt in fury, shouting, screaming, berating young employees over toys. This wasn't eccentricity. This was about control, about reminding everyone around him that his world operated by his rules, and anyone who served him existed to follow orders perfectly, or face his wrath. The concerning behaviour began early in Andrew's life. Writer Craig Brown documented an incident from when Andrew was 17 years old. At a house party, he unexpectedly entered a room where guests were sleeping late at night, citing being unable to sleep. The guests asked him to leave, which he did. But here's what that moment suggests. Even as a young person, Andrew appeared to have difficulty recognising appropriate social boundaries in private settings. In another incident years later, a journalist recounted Andrew entering her hotel room and bathroom area without invitation while she was preparing for the day. He then made comments about her routine. Consider that situation. Someone entering your private space uninvited to offer unsolicited advice, not charming behaviour, not playful eccentricity, a pattern of boundary issues that persisted into adulthood. Turn on notifications immediately, because the specific accounts now emerging show a pattern the palace desperately tried to suppress for decades. According to witnesses, Andrew operated by one consistent principle. Women existed for his amusement. At a formal dinner party, he told a guest that a dish of pâté smelled foul. When she leaned forward to check, he shoved her face directly into the plate. Guests report he laughed uproariously while she sat there, humiliated, covered in food. Another woman woke to find Andrew standing over her, aiming a fire extinguisher at her face. Witnesses say he repeated this joke in multiple rooms throughout the house. The fear on people's faces was, apparently, the entire point. These weren't pranks between friends. These were dominance games designed by someone who understood his targets couldn't retaliate without risking their social standing. Staff members, many of them teenagers who'd just arrived from different regions of the country, were particularly vulnerable. One former protection officer described Andrew's explosive reactions over trivial matters. Young housekeepers, some only 18 years old, living in palace apartments, would be verbally destroyed for following standard procedures. These weren't seasoned professionals accustomed to royal temperaments. These were kids, far from home, working their first serious jobs, being screamed at by the Queen's favourite son, and nobody dared intervene. The protection officer's words are revealing. No one would dare make an issue regarding his attitude. Andrew's position didn't just protect him, it actively silenced everyone around him. Multiple guests describe what they called his room inspections. During weekend gatherings at country estates, Andrew would prowl hallways after dark, testing doors, pushing into rooms where lights were still visible. One socialite recalled him opening her door uninvited, looking her up and down slowly, and announcing he was shopping for entertainment. Think about what that moment represents. A royal using his status to invade privacy, objectify women, and make clear that their consent was irrelevant. He developed elaborate scenes specifically engineered to cause embarrassment. A mustard prank where guests were tricked into clapping their hands around an open tube, spraying condiment across their faces. A fruit-passing ritual designed to force uncomfortable physical closeness. Childish stunts, yes, but delivered from such immense privilege that nobody dared call them what they were. Humiliation disguised as humour. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because these patterns are the foundation of his complete collapse. In 1981, the Queen arranged an Egyptian holiday for Andrew, a diplomatic gesture meant to strengthen relations. President Anwar Sadat loaned him the presidential jet. It was supposed to be elegant, respectful, a display of British grace. Instead, reports suggest Andrew spent the trip focusing inappropriate attention on another guest's wife. At a high society gathering, one account claims he jumped fully clothed into the swimming pool and dragged a hostess in with him. She emerged soaked, humiliated, while Andrew roared with laughter. This wasn't a private embarrassment. This was a royal representative of Britain, on an official visit, treating his host's hospitality like a personal playground. One of the most notorious allegations involves broadcaster Tanya Breyer. In 1992, witnesses claim Andrew approached her from behind at a society event and publicly unzipped her dress without consent for the amusement of those watching. Another titled woman recalled a Windsor Castle dinner where Andrew asked an 18-year-old guest about her profession. When she answered secretary, he scoffed and loudly declared to the entire table how terribly uninteresting she was. Multiple dinner companions described his humour as crude and obsessively focused on women's undergarments. And then there's this. Jeffrey Epstein reportedly said, "Andrew was the only person I've found that's more perverted than I am." He called him the king of kink. Let that settle. A convicted sex offender identifying Andrew as even worse. Author Andrew Looney described Andrew as possessing a strongly juvenile personality, someone who provoked reactions for entertainment. But these weren't harmless provocations. These were calculated humiliations delivered from a position of untouchable privilege. Many targets were young women. Many were staff members with no recourse. For decades, the monarchy either protected him or dismissed complaints outright. And with each ignored incident, Andrew grew more emboldened, more certain that consequences would never arrive. That certainty has now been destroyed. On November 6th, King Charles stripped Andrew of all remaining titles. This decision came after Virginia Giuffre's autobiography and the growing realisation that Andrew would never rehabilitate his public image. These witness accounts make one thing undeniable. The Andrew we're seeing today isn't a recent creation. The behaviour was always there. The evidence was always documented. The complaints were always filed. They were just systematically ignored. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is no longer His Royal Highness. He no longer holds any title. Soon, he won't even have Royal Lodge. But these stories reveal something deeper. For decades, Andrew demeaned and humiliated others, often women, because he genuinely believed he'd never face consequences. He was correct, until he wasn't. So here's what I want to know. Should more witnesses step forward publicly? Should the palace have intervened decades ago when the first complaints surfaced? And what does this reveal about the institutional culture that shielded him for so long? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications. Because as more people find the courage to speak, the complete picture of Andrew's behaviour is still unfolding. These revelations expose Andrew's past. But his present is just as shocking. Right now, he's demanding that King Charles provide full household staff, expanded property rights, and lifetime financial support. Click the video on your screen to see how someone who treated people this way now believes the institution owes him everything.